They disowned me for choosing art. Now they're begging me for $850,000 to save their business. Ever hear about successful people who got cut off by their families? Yeah, I'm one of them. And let me tell you, it gets real interesting when those same parents suddenly find out you made it. I was 18 when my parents kicked me out. The reason? I chose to go to art school instead of following the path they'd laid out for me. My dad ran 3 car dealerships, and the plan was always for me to take over the business one day. He never stopped talking about it. It was practically his life's mission for me. But before I dive into all that, let me say this. I've noticed the channel's been slowing down a bit lately. If you're here and you like these stories, hitting that subscribe button is the easiest way to show support. It's fast, it's free, and it really helps keep this community growing strong. So when I got my acceptance letter from Ashford Institute of Arts, I brought it home thinking they'd be proud. I really believed they'd see it as something worth celebrating. But instead of congratulations, my dad tore the letter in half right in front of me. Didn't even blink. No son of mine is throwing his life away doodling, he said, not even bothering to look me in the eye. My mom just sat there like a statue, hands in her lap, saying nothing as usual when he was on a rant. I told them I was leaving anyway. That's when my dad hurled my duffel bag at me and said if I stepped out that door, I shouldn't bother coming back. That was it. No hugs, no goodbyes. Just cold silence and a slammed door behind me. At the time, I had about $2,700 saved up from working summer jobs. Thought it would stretch a lot farther than it did. Spoiler, it didn't. That first year was rough. I crammed into a room the size of a closet with 2 other guys, worked overnight shifts at a 24-hour diner, and barely got any sleep. Sometimes I'd call home just to hear my mom's voice, but all she'd do was whisper, "Your dad's listening," and hang up. After enough of those, I stopped calling. By my 3rd year, I started selling some design work online, logos, simple websites, that kind of thing. Nothing groundbreaking, but it meant I could finally afford something other than ramen. Small victories, right? I graduated with honors. Walked across that stage alone, no family in the crowd. I told myself it didn't matter. Maybe I even believed it. Fast forward 5 years after getting disowned, and that side hustle had turned into a full-blown design agency. I had a team of 15, clients in 3 countries, and real momentum. I bought my own apartment in Brooklyn, drove a nice car, wore designer clothes, all the traditional signs of making it. Funny thing? My parents had no idea. As far as they were concerned, I disappeared the moment I left home. Then, out of nowhere, my younger sister Qley found me on Instagram. She was in college by then and had secretly been keeping tabs on me over the years. We were both a mess when we met for coffee, nervous, shaky, unsure of what to say. She pulled out photos of our parents. They looked way older than I remembered. That's when she told me they'd seen my company featured in Marketpulse Weekly. Apparently, my agency got profiled for some work we did with a major tech company, and the article mentioned we were pulling in 7 figures. There was even a photo of me and the team at our Manhattan office. She said Dad went pale when he realized the guy in the article was me. According to her, he'd been carrying that magazine clipping in his wallet ever since. Then she dropped the bomb. They wanted to reconnect. 3 days later, I got a text from a number I deleted years ago but still recognized immediately. It was my dad. Out of the blue, he asked if we could meet. No apology, no explanation, no mention of the years of silence. Just a casual, "Let's catch up." I agreed to meet them at a restaurant near my office. The moment I walked in, my mom burst into tears. My dad stood up and stuck out his hand like we were business partners meeting for lunch. I didn't shake it. "We're so proud of what you've done," he said, like he'd been cheering me on all along. That's when the truth came out. His dealerships were in trouble. Online car sales were crushing his old-school business model, and he needed money fast. I asked how much he needed. The number made me laugh out loud, $850,000. Almost the exact cost of my 4 years at Ashford Institute of Arts, the education he refused to support. "We're family," he said, like that explained everything. Family helps family. I looked at him, then at my mom, who still hadn't said a single word. And I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness. Just emptiness. Whatever connection we'd had was long gone. "I'm sorry," I said, getting up from my chair. "But you made it pretty clear a long time ago that I'm not part of this family." That's when his expression changed. The fake friendly mask dropped, and the cold stare from the night he kicked me out came right back. "You ungrateful little," he started, but I cut him off. "I built all of this while you pretended I didn't exist. The only reason you're sitting here now is because you want something from me." I left a few bills to cover my untouched meal and walked out. My phone blew up after that, first angry texts, then guilt trips. The next day, they even showed up at my office, causing a scene until security had to escort them out. What they didn't know was that I'd already set up a college fund for Qley, because she shouldn't have to choose between her dreams and her family the way I did. Every now and then, I catch myself wondering if I made the right call. Not when it comes to the money. There's no doubt in my mind they had no right to that. But cutting ties completely? Shutting the door for good? That's the part one questions sometimes. Then I think about all the birthdays, holidays, and milestones they chose to miss, not because they couldn't be there, but because they decided not to be. That always brings me back to reality. The night after I had our parents thrown out of my office building, Qley called me. She was crying, really crying, the kind of tears I hadn't heard from her since we were little kids. "Dad's furious," she said between sobs. "He's saying the most awful things about you." I didn't even flinch. That was just classic him. Anytime he didn't get his way, he had to make someone else the villain. It was always somebody else's fault. I asked her if she was okay, and she went quiet for a moment. Then she finally said, "They don't know." I instantly understood what she meant. "I warned you they were coming," she whispered. That's when it clicked. Qley had been hiding our conversations from them. She was still financially dependent, still going home for college breaks. She couldn't risk the same fallout I had. The difference was, when I got kicked out, I already had my scholarship and my spot at art school locked in. Qley was still halfway through her degree, and she didn't have a safety net. "Don't worry," I told her. "As far as they know, I tracked you down, not the other way around." The next morning, my assistant buzzed to let me know my mom was downstairs in the lobby. Alone. No dad. That was surprising enough that I agreed to see her. When she walked into my office, she looked smaller, somehow. Like she was trying to shrink into herself. She clutched her purse like it might protect her. "Your father doesn't know I'm here," she said, still standing even though I pointed to the chair across from my desk. He wouldn't approve. 7 years had passed, and she still couldn't make a move without checking how he'd feel about it. Some things never change. "What do you want, Mom?" I asked, doing my best to keep my voice steady. She fumbled with her purse for a second, then pulled out a small box. "I saved this for you," she said. "I always believed you'd come back someday." Inside was my grandfather's old watch. He was an artist too, a detail my father had conveniently left out of our family history. Grandpa gave me that watch when I was 16, told me to chase what I loved, no matter what. I'd accidentally left it behind when I got thrown out in all the chaos. "Your father wanted to sell it," she said softly, "but I hid it." For the first time, I realized she might have been fighting her own quiet rebellion all along. It wasn't much, and it came far too late, but it was something. "Why didn't you ever call me back?" I asked. "All those times I reached out?" Her eyes filled with tears. "I was scared," she said. "Not just of your father, but of hearing how badly you were struggling, knowing I played a part in it by never standing up for you." She finally sank into the chair like the act of saying that had drained her. Then she confessed the real reason she was there. "It's not just the dealership. Your father made some bad investments. We're about to lose the house. He's too proud to admit it, but it's happening." I felt a flicker of sympathy for a second, but I shut it down fast. I thought about all the nights I spent crashing on friends' couches or sleeping in the back of the diner I worked at. Where was their concern then? I looked her in the eyes and said, "Then he can rebuild, just like I had to." She nodded. She didn't try to argue or guilt me. "I understand," she said. "I just wanted you to know I kept something that was yours. And I'm sorry for not being stronger." As she stood up to leave, she added, "Qley's been thinking about transferring to school in New York. Your father's against it, but I think she should be close to you." 2 days later, I got a thick envelope from my father's lawyer. It was formal paperwork, asking me to invest in the family business. The deal? I'd hand over nearly $1 million in exchange for a 10% stake in a company that was clearly sinking. Tucked inside was a handwritten note. "Blood is thicker than water. Don't forget where you came from." So I had my lawyer draft a reply. I remember exactly where I came from. That's why my answer is no. What I didn't expect was what came next. My father started calling my clients, trying to poison the well. Told them I had abandoned my family, painted me as some heartless, self-centered fraud. He even reached out to a few of my employees, feeding them lies about me. Most people saw right through it, but some didn't. It caused damage. Nothing fatal, but enough to make my life harder. Then came the final straw. He showed up at my apartment building, drunk, shouting in the lobby, calling me an ungrateful bastard loud enough for the neighbors to hear. The doorman had to call the cops, and I had to decide, do I press charges against my own father? I didn't, but I did file for a restraining order. When the court papers were delivered, my mom called me sobbing. "He's not a bad man," she insisted. "He's just desperate and proud." But I was done making excuses for him. "Those aren't just personality traits," I said. "They're exactly why I had to walk away." After that, 3 months passed without a word from either of them. I threw myself into work and kept growing the agency. During that time, I helped Qley transfer to Bayside University. She moved into my guest room temporarily, though we both knew it would probably end up being permanent. She was the only family I really needed anymore. Then, one night, my assistant forwarded me an email. It was from my father's dealership, a public job listing for a new general manager. At the bottom of the job posting was a short note: "The position's open because I'm retiring." Not asking for anything. Just thought you should know. I hovered over the delete button. I almost hit it. But something curiosity, habit, I'm not even sure what, made me call the dealership the next day. I didn't ask to speak with my father. I called Gloria instead, his longtime secretary. The same Gloria who used to sneak me butterscotch candies when I tagged along to the office as a kid. "Oh, honey," she said the moment she realized it was me. "You haven't heard?" That's how I found out he'd had a minor stroke a couple of weeks earlier. He was recovering, but doctors told him it was time to slow down. The dealerships were being sold off to a national chain, the family house was up for sale, and my parents were moving into a condo. "He's too proud to pick up the phone," Gloria told me. "But he keeps that magazine with your picture in his hospital room." I didn't know what to feel. Part of me thought it was just another way to guilt me back into the fold. But then I remembered a different version of my dad, the one who taught me to ride a bike, who clapped louder than anyone at my Little League games, before his ambition for me swallowed who I actually was. I didn't go visit him, but I sent flowers. And I asked my lawyer to set up a trust, just for their medical expenses. Not cash in their hands, not a bailout. Just a way to make sure they'd be taken care of, at least in that regard. I wasn't ready to forgive, but I couldn't bring myself to do nothing. A week later, after dropping Qley off at Bayside University, I came home to find a letter on my kitchen table, handwritten, shaky, clearly written during recovery. I was wrong. That's how it started. It wasn't just about art, he wrote. It was about his definition of success. He said it took losing everything to finally see that I'd built something lasting, something real, something better than he managed in twice the time. No plea for money. No blame. Just acknowledgement. The kind I never thought I'd get. The following Sunday, I drove out to their new condo. It was small, quiet, a far cry from the oversized house I grew up in. My mom opened the door and froze when she saw me. Then she threw her arms around me like she was afraid I'd vanish if she didn't hold on tight. Dad was sitting in a recliner across the room. He looked older, weaker, but he still had that familiar intensity in his eyes. He started to stand when he saw me. "Don't," I said. "I'm not staying long. At first, we just talked about surface-level things. The weather, Chloe's classes, my recent trip to Japan for a client. Small talk that didn't mean anything, but filled the silence." Then he cleared his throat. "I've had a lot of time to think," he said. "About what I'm leaving behind, not the business. That's gone. But what my kids will remember about me." He looked at me, really looked at me, for what felt like the first time since I was a teenager. I was raised to believe a man's worth was in his work, in providing. I didn't see art as work. I couldn't understand how my son could throw away a steady path for something so uncertain. He looked around the modest living room, almost in disbelief. But I followed all the rules. Did everything the way I was supposed to. And I ended up here. You followed your passion and built something remarkable. That magazine said your agency's worth 8 figures. I nodded. We'd been valued at around $12 million in a recent merger conversation, though I wasn't planning to sell. "I'm not here to ask for anything," he added. "Wouldn't take it if you offered. My pride's taken enough hits. I just wanted you to know. I see it now. I see you. And I was wrong to ever try and stop you. It wasn't some sweeping, emotional reunion. There were too many wounds for that. Too many years of silence. But it was a start. A crack in the wall we'd spent so long building between us. I stayed for dinner. My mom had made my favorite meal from when I was a kid. I hadn't had it in years. We talked about my business, about where I was headed, even a little about my art, though I could tell my dad still didn't totally get it. He was at least making the effort. When I was getting ready to leave, he handed me something. It was a small, worn leather-bound book. "Your grandfather's sketchbook," he said quietly. "I should have given this to you a long time ago." Inside were pages filled with sketches, landscapes, portraits, furniture designs. My grandfather had been an artist in every sense, and apparently a damn good one. But all of it had been hidden away, locked out of the family story because it didn't fit the image my father wanted to maintain. "There's more of him in you than there is of me," Dad said. And maybe that's not such a bad thing after all. I didn't forgive him that day. Real forgiveness, that kind of deep, soul-level letting go, takes time, if it ever comes at all. But that visit cracked something open. For the first time, I started to understand him. How his father had shoved him headfirst into the car business. How he'd spent his whole life trying not to fail at something he never really chose. How watching me succeed by breaking all his rules must have shaken the ground beneath his feet. It didn't excuse what he'd done, but it helped explain it. Over the next year, we started building something new. Carefully, slowly. Monthly dinners. The occasional phone call. My mom started volunteering at a kids' art therapy program. Her way, I think, of trying to make amends in the only way she knew how. My dad, to my complete shock, began mentoring young entrepreneurs. He'd tell them the hard truths he wished he'd heard early on, especially about trusting your kids, even when you don't understand their dreams. Qley graduated that spring and came to work at my agency. She brought a business brain I sometimes lacked and ended up becoming the bridge between two worlds, mine and our parents. When the old friction started to spark again, she was the translator, smoothing things over with a mix of logic and heart. That trust fund I set up for their medical expenses, it mostly just sat there. My dad insisted on using Medicare and supplemental coverage instead. Save it for when we're really old and unbearable, he joked once. It was the first time I'd heard him joke in years. Last month, we opened our newest office in Chicago, just a few miles from where I grew up. At the launch party, I spotted them in the crowd. My dad, standing with a cane but still upright, watching as I gave my speech. And this time, he wasn't judging or analyzing. He was just watching, proud. Afterward, he shook my hand like it was some business deal, then pulled me into a hug that caught me completely off guard. "You did good, son," he said. Then, after a pause, added, "You did better than good." It wasn't everything. It didn't erase those 7 years of silence, or the nights I cried myself to sleep wondering why I was never enough just being me. But it was something. It was an acknowledgement, a quiet truth, that each of us has the right to define success for ourselves. That sometimes the richest kind of life isn't about money. It's about the freedom to be who you really are, to build something from nothing and believe that it matters. And maybe, just maybe, to find the strength to open a door you thought had been locked forever. My agency now runs a scholarship for young art students whose families don't support their dreams. The first recipient? A crazy talented kid from my hometown, whose dad happens to run a car dealership and believes art's a waste of time. Every scholarship check? My dad signs them personally. People sometimes ask me if I've forgiven my parents. And honestly, it's not that simple. What I've done is accept. I've accepted that they did the best they could with what they knew. I've realized that the painful shove they gave me out of the nest might have actually helped me learn to fly. And I've come to believe something bigger. That family isn't about blood or guilt or tradition. It's about choice. It's about showing up over and over, even when it's uncomfortable, even when you don't have all the answers. It's about learning to really see each other, flaws and all, and choosing to keep trying. The greatest wealth I've found isn't the money in my account. It's the freedom to be myself. It's knowing I broke a cycle, that I built something stronger, with enough room for everyone to stand tall in their truth, even if that truth looks different from mine. My father lost everything trying to keep control. I gained everything the moment I let it go. Today, we're not the family we used to be. We're something else now. Something rebuilt. Stronger at the core. A little messy, maybe, but real. And maybe that's all any family can hope to be.